Some sea creatures can find their way through thousands of miles of seemingly featureless oceans. Even more impressive is the route.
One of the concerns about working with genetically modified crops has been that vegetation growing in agricultural fields might escape out into the world. Now, for the first time in the US, researchers report a large population of GM crops. One of the concerns about working with genetically modified crops is
হ্যালো গাইস, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। থ্যাংক ইউ ফর জয়নিং মাই লাইভ। এটা হচ্ছে আমার একটা ইংলিশ পার্ট। সো এইটা হচ্ছে একটা প্যারাগ্রাফের মতো। এখানে হচ্ছে আপনার এই অডিওটা হবে। তো তখন আমাকে কাউন্ট করতে হবে ও কি কোন ওয়ার্ডটা মিস্টেক করেছে। তো এরকম কাউন্ট করতে হবে। ও যদি এটা মিস্টেক করে আমি কাউন্ট করলাম তাহলে আমার নাম্বার অ্যাড হবে। আর যদি আমি ভুলগুলো মিস্টেক করি তাহলে এটা মাইনাস হবে। তো আপনারা দেখেন আমার কয়টা হয় এটাতে। আপনারা শুনেন ওর অ্যাকসেন্টগুলো কীভাবে বলে ইংলিশটা। ওকে, লেটস স্টার্ট।
one of the concerns about working with genetically
লাইক
modified
ও বলছে ওয়ান অফ দ্য কনসার্ট, এটা কিন্তু কনসার্ট না, আপনারা দেখতে পাচ্ছেন। তো এটা মিস্টেক বলছে, এই যে আমি এখানে করলাম, জাস্ট আপনাদের দেখাচ্ছি। দেখেন এই যে আমারটা রাইট হয়েছে, রাইট চিহ্ন উঠেছে। ওকে, নেক্সট স্টার্ট ফুল।
One of the concerns about working with genetically modified crops has been that vegetation growing in agricultural fields might escape out into the world. Now, for the first time in the US, researchers report a large population of GM crops beyond the farm. Transgenic canola plants in North Dakota have received genes making them resistant to herbicides, such as the weed killer Roundup. Researchers collected and tested 406 canola plants along thousands of miles of state roads. They found 347 carrying at least one resistance gene. There were also indications that the inserted genes were being passed on to new generations, producing some plants in the wild with multiple transgenes. The findings were presented on August 6th at the annual meeting of the Ecological Society of America in Pittsburgh. The transgenic canola plants are not about to take over the world, but researchers are obviously curious about how these particular plants manage to make it in places like the edges of parking lots rather than pampered fields. Any answers they find will likely affect future biotechnology regulation.
দেখেন গাইস, আমার একটা মিস্টেক হয়েছে। এবার আমি কয়টা ধরতে পারছি? একটা, দুইটা, তিনটা, চারটা ধরতে পারছি। এখানে আছে আপনার টোটালি একটা, দুইটা, তিনটা, চারটা, পাঁচটা, ছয়টা। ছয়টার মধ্যে আমি চারটা পারছি, একটা মিস্টেক করছি, যার জন্য আমার 4 নাম্বার আসতো, বাট আমার এখন আসবে 3, কারণ এটা মাইনাস নাম্বার আছে এই জন্যে। দ্যাটস ওয়াই। হাই, thank you for your comment. Please like and subscribe my YouTube channel, please. 6 out of 3. No good. Okay, next.
Picture a gamer, someone who spends countless hours immersed in one of those online role-playing alternate realities. And what do you see? Is it a physically fit female closer to 40 than 14? If not, you may need to rethink your assumptions about geekdom, because a study in the Journal of Communication shows that when it comes to dominating the virtual world, women are actually more hardcore than men. Scientists conducted a survey of some 7,000 players who were logged onto a game called EverQuest 2, and they discovered some interesting things. First off, the average age of the gamers surveyed was 31, and that playing time tended to increase with age, which is also where the sex differences come in. The female gamers actually logged more time online, an average of 29 hours a week versus 25 for the males, with the top players putting in 57 hours a week on the girls' side and 51 for the guys. What's more, it looks like women are more likely to lie about how much they really play. The researchers found that the gals tended to lowball how long they spend glued to the screen. So never ask a woman her age, or how much time she spends defeating the Dark Elves to rebuild the world of Norath.
Oh, better. দেখেন গাইস আমার কয়টা হয়েছে? 1 2 3 4 5। এটা টোটালি আছে 7, দুইটা কাউন্ট করতে পারি নাই। 1 আর 2 মিস্টেক হয়েছে। 11 out of 5. Oh sorry, 7 out of 5. 2 mistake. This is little bit better, but no good. Okay, next time.
You probably take your depth perception for granted, It allows you to easily judge distances. Each eye sends a different signal. You probably take your depth perception for granted. It allows you to easily
She said this is precision, but not. This is interjection. This is mistake. That's why I correct.
judge distances. Each eye sends. You probably take your depth perception for granted. It allows you to easily judge distances. Each eye sends a different signal to the brain, and the brain compares the two pictures. But even using just one eye, the world doesn't suddenly appear flat. So how can just one eye provide depth perception? A team at the University of Rochester recently published a possible answer to that question online in the journal Nature. It has to do with a small part of our brain called the middle temporal area. This region processes information both from visual cues and from the motion of our eyes. Researchers examined macaque monkeys watching virtual reality. Basically, the eye moves when something crosses the path of vision. This middle temporal area picks up the speed of the objects relative to these eye movements. Neurons in that brain region showed activity that signaled depth perception, even in the absence of other cues. This new information may be useful for creating better virtual reality, and scientists also hope that it leads to better tools to assist children born with misaligned eyes.
দেখি এখন কয়টা হয়েছে আমার ওয়াও বেটার 1 2 3 4 5 2 মিস্টেক সেম 5 7 out of 5 but no mistake any right correct 4 5 2 mistake okay this is very good if you get a lot of practice English that you got a English accent and English speaking.
You probably take your depth perception for granted. It allows.
And next one.
When you get caught in a downpour, you probably don't think about the size of the raindrops that assault you as you run
She said this is probably, but this is tropically.
for cover. But physicists do, and they've come to the conclusion that the drops that hit the ground, or your head, are the shattered remains of bigger drops that fell from the when you get caught in a downpour, you probably don't think about the size of the raindrops that assault you as you run for cover. But physicists do, and they've come to the when you get caught in a downpour, you probably don't think about the size of the raindrops that assault you as you run for cover. But physicists do, and they've come to the conclusion that the drops that hit the ground, or your head, are the shattered remains of bigger drops that fell from the clouds. Raindrops come in a variety of sizes, even within the same storm, and scientists used to think that to get that kind of distribution, raindrops must crash into each other on the way down, breaking up into smaller droplets or coalescing into larger ones. When you get caught in a downpour, you probably don't think about the size of the raindrops that assault you as you run for cover. But physicists do, and they've come to the conclusion that the drops that hit the ground, or your head, are the shattered remains of bigger drops that fell from the clouds. Raindrops come in a variety of sizes, even within the same storm, and scientists used to think that to get that kind of distribution, raindrops must crash into each other on the way down, breaking up into smaller droplets or coalescing into larger ones. Now a team of French scientists has produced high-speed footage of falling water droplets, and they find that drops of different dimensions don't require collision. They come from the fragmentation of individual isolated droplets. Their results appear online in the journal Nature Physics. The video evidence reveals that water droplets first flatten out as they fall, and as these plummeting pancakes get wider and thinner, they eventually capture air, forming what look like little plastic grocery bags floating in a breeze. When the bags get big enough, they pop, and you're left wondering why you can never remember your umbrella.
Wow, that's good. 1 2 3 4 out of 5. Look everyone 4. Another one.
Scientists hope to build nanoscale robots to deliver medicine to specific sites in our bodies. But supplying energy to the nanobots so that they can carry out these tasks is one of the stumbling blocks in developing the technology. So researchers have turned to sperm. Tiny sperm need plenty of energy to swim their way to their target. And Alex Travis at Cornell University is trying to take advantage of in developing the technology. So researchers have turned to sperm. Tiny sperm need plenty of energy to swim their way to their target. And Alex Travis at Cornell University is trying to take advantage of what sperm do naturally for use in nanobots. Sperm have two methods of creating energy. Their mitochondria generate chemical energy, but they can also break down glucose. That process requires 10 enzymes that attach to a sheath running down the sperm's tail. Travis and his team are trying to recreate that enzymatic process. They're developing enzymes that bind to nickel ions on a chip instead of to sperm. So far, they've managed to attach 3 of the 10 enzymes necessary, and they've shown that the 10 enzymes can act in a series. If they can attach all 10, the nanobots could potentially use glucose in blood to swim their way to diseased cells.
Beauty is only skin deep, and the beauty of shiny white teeth is even less deep, because a new study shows that fluoride forms a thinner protective shield than experts thought it did. The results appear in the Surface Science journal Langmuir. American consumers spend more than $50 billion a year fighting cavities. When we realized fluoride could help, we put it in our drinking water, our toothpaste, and our mouthwash. But how does fluoride work its magic? Many figured that fluoride chemically reacts with the main mineral in enamel to form a thick, decay-resistant veneer. But the latest research kicks that idea in the teeth. Scientists in Germany used X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy to get a detailed image of the surface of a treated tooth. And they found that the protective covering is actually only 6 nanometers thick. That's about a 15,000th as thick as a sheet of paper. And a layer that skimpy would likely be worn away by ordinary chewing. How fluoride keeps the tooth fairy away is a mystery that researchers are still working to unravel. In the meantime, we may not know how it works, but we know that it works. So keep brushing.
1, 2, 3, 4. Not bad.
Some scientists say the use of fire helped make us modern humans. It dramatically changed what and how we eat, and may have even altered our anatomy. But University of Utah anthropologist Polly Wiesner thinks that fire was also important in shaping human social interactions and cultural traditions. Her conclusions are in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Wiesner evaluated day and night activities and conversations of Kalahari Bushmen from Botswana and Namibia. These communities still live by hunting and gathering, as most humans did over evolutionary history. During the day, nearly a third of the conversations dealt with economic issues such as hunting strategies and foraging plans. Another third covered complaints, criticisms, and gossip. But at night, around the fire, more than 80% of group conversations were storytelling, often about people living far away or in the spirit world. Wiesner says that humans are unique in that we create ties to others outside of our immediate group. Gathering at the fire expanded listeners' imaginations and allowed for the development of cognitive processes that made it possible to form those links to distant communities, which makes fire the precursor to Facebook.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6. Good, no bad. 6 of 5. Another one we can try.
The ability to distinguish between sounds of varying pitch makes people capable of producing and understanding speech and music. And the way we are able to process pitch has been thought to be unique to our big brain species. But now there's evidence that a tiny monkey, the common marmoset from Brazil, can distinguish pitch the same way we do. That's according to a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. 10 years ago, researchers identified a region of the marmoset brain that appeared to process pitch, but they needed to confirm that the animals did indeed notice changes in pitch, which presented a challenge. They had to find a way to get the animal to indicate that it had heard something, so they trained the marmosets to respond to a change in pitch with a behavior. Specifically, they would lick a water spout. The researchers then had the animals listen to a series of notes with the same pitch, and at random, they'd change it up.
Just like, for example, when I say ma, 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 right? At some point, I make the pitch a little higher.
Johns Hopkins neuroscientist Xiaoxin Wang, lead researcher of the study. The actual difference in pitch, he says, was much smaller than that. But you get the idea.
And when animal hear that change, it will lick the water spout to indicate that here's the difference.
which the minuscule monkeys indeed did. Because both we and marmosets have this talent, the ability likely evolved in a common ancestor long ago. This type of pitch perception may thus go back more than 40 million years ago, much earlier than previously thought. And the understanding of how the brain processes pitch may eventually explain why some people have perfect pitch while others are tone deaf.
Better. I can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and mistake 2. So 7 out of 5. 7 out of 5. Okay, next one.
Imagine Van Gogh's paintings of yellow sunflowers. Now, imagine the flowers brown. Not so good. Sadly, we may someday see what that would look like, because the bright yellow paints on the canvas are slowly turning muddy. Now, an international team of scientists has pinpointed the chemical reaction that drives this degradation, the first step toward stopping it. Their findings appear in the journal Analytical Chemistry. Van Gogh's use of strong, bright colors to convey mood and emotion marks a major milestone in art history, and his sunflower series wouldn't be the same without the vibrant chrome yellow pigment that was new at the time. But this color darkens when exposed to the sun. To find out why, researchers used X-ray analyses to determine the exact chemical composition of the paint as it browns. First, they exposed 3 tubes of chrome yellow to UV radiation until one turned a chocolate color. Analyzing that sample, they identified specific changes in the paint's chromium compounds. They then found the same chemical signature in the darkened areas of 2 Van Gogh paintings. Until a chemical antidote is found, the researchers have some ironic advice. Keep sunlight away from Van Gogh's sunflowers.
1, 2, 3, 4. 2 mistake. No good. Why not? Out of 6, 6. I will next try.
There's a lot of this.
This is a very big.
China emits over a quarter of the world's carbon, some 10 billion tons. That's twice what we pump out here in the US. But before the
PCR, the polymerase chain reaction, is a crucial tool. The DNA amplification technique is used in genome sequencing, forensics, and the diagnosis of various diseases. To give researchers more genetic material to work with, a PCR instrument repeatedly heats and cools an original biological sample, which gives enzymes a chance to replicate the DNA millions of times so it can be more easily analyzed. Such sequence amplification would be a boon to diagnosis in a doctor's office, especially when an infectious disease is spreading rapidly. Unfortunately, genetic tests usually take a day or 2 to complete, but researchers at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory aim to speed up the process. First, they created an extremely fast thermal cycle in which a sample experiences 45 degrees Celsius temperature changes per second. Then they searched for DNA amplification enzymes that could operate at that thermal cycling speed, and they found 2 that worked without any tweaking. The technique accomplishes a billion-fold amplification in well under 3 minutes. The work is in the journal Analyst. The system could make it possible to identify food contamination virtually instantly, or an infection before you even finish coughing.
Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 1 mistake. That's good. 6 out of 5. That's good. Please, guys, like my share,
Want to know the
like,
route humans
comment.
took when they first migrated from Africa into Europe? Seems that they might have marked the path. Not want to know the route humans took when they first migrated from Africa into Europe? Seems that they might have marked the path. Not like Hansel and Gretel, who consciously left breadcrumbs. Ancient humans ate as they trekked, and they appear to have checked aside the packaging for some of their slimy sustenance. Snails. Conventional wisdom has been that humans initially traveled from Africa to the Near East, then up around the Mediterranean through Lebanon before heading into Europe some 40 to 50,000 years ago. But recently, some scientists have theorized that humans made it to Europe first and then headed east. Now there's more support for the old view that humans traveled through the Levant on the way to Europe in the form of the shells of edible marine snails. The study is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers evaluated shells from an archaeological site dated to the Upper Paleolithic in Lebanon. The shells were mostly intact, except the tapered pointy tip had been removed, most likely for easier access to the meat inside. The scientists calculated the age of the shells via a variety of methods, and they found that the snails dated back almost 46,000 years. The earliest evidence of modern human remains in Europe seems to be no more than 45,000 years old. The snail evidence thus adds weight to the hypothesis that ancient people passed through the Levant on their way to Europe, and not at a snail's pace either.
2 mistake. Next one. remember.
Remember the Seinfeld where George buys John Voight's car? Or the one where Elaine bids on JFK's golf clubs? Why would anyone spend money, often a lot of money, on a common object just because somebody famous once owned it? A study in the Journal of Consumer Research offers some insights. In one experiment, subjects rated how much they...
Oh my god.